And the way the management company described the porch was that as you step out on the balcony, it's squishy. I was like, that can't be safe.
Squishy is never good when you're talking about a structure. Hello, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I had an unexpectedly busy day.
Now, that's usually
that's usually how they go, right?
That's right. Don't say I have a usually unexpected quiet day.
Right. But my grades are in, so
Don't make Jeremy feel bad.
Man. I know Justin's grades are in, so now I definitely feel bad.
Justin's grades are always in early.
Yeah. Now, am I done? No, because I'm throwing a graduation party tomorrow for all of our graduate students. And so, last year we threw them a parade. There were 3 of them and they all lived in Greensboro. And so it was feasible for us to do that. And so we got 13 faculty members all in their own cars to caravan all over Greensboro last year. And it was great. It was a lot of fun. And then we knew we wanted to do something again this year, but graduation is unfolding differently this year than it did last year. And then obviously any other year. And so I told them all, I said, we can't do you a parade because there are 9 of you this year and not all of you live in Greensboro. So how about we throw you a reverse parade? So we're going over to the urban farm where I do stuff and they're going to caravan over from the university over to the farm. And then we've got several checkpoints set up. And so they're all going to drive through. They're going to drive through us this time.
Oh, okay.
And so, and we've got little gifts and tumblers and t-shirts and things like that we're going to give them. So, because they've done most of their entire degree.
I know.
In a pandemic. And so the fact that we got all 9 of them through this year, I think was just something remarkable. I'm very, very proud of them. So, yeah. So have you all settled who's doing the toast?
Jeremy is.
Jeremy, no, he's doing the toast.
No, he does not. I guess Terry's doing it then.
Terry, do you want to do the toast?
I'll do the
No,
toast.
I will not go up to your event.
The price of improvement is failure. Welcome to Liquid Philosophy.
Well, hello there, Liquid Philosophy folks. Welcome to our end of season, end of semester wrap-up show. We've got a special treat for you all today in that we have Dr. Terry Shelton, who is our Vice Chancellor for Research and Engagement and also our acting provost at UNCG. So welcome, Terry. We are absolutely delighted that you could be here at the end of our semester and season. You are one of my favorite people on campus and I have learned a lot from you. So forgive me if, similar to other guests, I fangirl out just a little bit. So I'm Marianne LaGreco. I am an associate professor in the Department of Communication Studies. And with me are my 2 co-hosts who I am going to ask to introduce themselves now.
And I'm Jeremy Rinker. I'm an assistant professor in Peace and Conflict Studies, but in August, I will be an associate professor in Peace and Conflict Studies.
And I'm Justin Harmon. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Community and Therapeutic Recreation, and acting provost Shelton is going to make me a tenured associate professor by the end of this episode.
I'm gonna wave my magic wand.
That's what the people want. You got to give it to them.
Yep. So.
All right. So we hear, Terry, that you're still at work, so you probably don't have a cocktail on your desk.
I do.
And I'd like to make
like
to make a comment about that actually. So the last time we talked to a provost was Provost Dunn, and we did it in person. And at the end of the episode, after Dana had left, Marianne drank the remaining wine in her glass because she wanted to absorb the superpowers of the provost.
I didn't really want to see the wine go to waste.
So it's unfortunate that she can't do it with you on this episode.
Well,
That's all right.
I look forward to having come to some of these when we were doing them together and out. So I look forward to when we can do it. So I'm going to take a rain check, and when we are together and I'm not at work, I will have a glass of wine. There'll be none for you to drink.
I will also save you some. All right, it's strawberry tequila season. So every year I get strawberries from Red Farms.
Yeah,
And
right.
I make tequila with it. And well, the tequila's already made. I just put the strawberries in it. But anyway, I will save you at least a little bottle.
Thank
And the
you.
next time I see you,
Sounds good.
about. So, but we're still going to do a toast because it's a celebratory end of season, end of semester episode. And so I guess Jeremy's going to be doing our toast. So what you got, Jeremy?
All right. Well, so I don't know if you can, you can't see with my, all right, I'll just say, I have a pro bono vanilla porter, which is 9% actually. So I may only drink one of them. But on the can, it actually says justice for the masses, which I will say that is my toast for today. Seems appropriate given our context of racial reckoning and COVID and all the justice issues around that. So here's to justice for the masses.
Justice for the masses.
Cheers.
And I'd like to say that I got my holidays mixed up. Today is Cinco de Mayo, but I have a 420.
That's true. It is Cinco de Mayo.
It is Cinco de Mayo.
That's great.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm not exactly sure what day it is going to be when we actually post the episode, but for now, celebration nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are here at the end of our semester, and so it's kind of a time for celebration on some level because we've at least made it this far. So, what are you all looking forward to here at the end of the semester?
You want me to start?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh. I think even though there are 5 ceremonies, I actually am looking forward to commencement. I am glad that we can have something in person. I think especially this year, getting to the finish line, as we were talking before, is pretty amazing. And it's so important to have that opportunity, I think, for friends and family and to celebrate. So even though it'll be a long day on Friday and Saturday, I'm glad we've got the opportunity for folks to come back from 2020 and celebrate that. So I'm happy about that. And I'm happy that we got to the end in the way that we did. I love this place. You all know it. I'm kind of sappy about it. But I just have been reinforced in how incredible this place is. The faculty, the staff, the students pulling together, how we weathered COVID. And I'm not minimizing, we got scars and some more for some folks than others, but it's just a good reminder. We've got grit. And so I celebrate that and look forward to some times when we can be together and not on Zoom. So I am not looking forward to any more Zoom meetings, but I know we have some more to come. So.
Well, in a minute, we're going to come back and ask a little bit more about some highlights from your career and things like that, both at UNCG and in everything that you do. But how about you, Jeremy and Justin? Do you guys have anything you're looking forward to here at the end of the semester?
Believe it or not, I don't have much kind of holiday plans or vacation plans, but I am looking forward to just being able, that's why I went, being able to breathe a little bit. And I have a couple of house projects that have just been like languishing and not getting done. And I actually look forward to just being able to, so one of them is a kitchen remodel halfway done that I've been working on for a while. And I just have some painting to do to finish that up. And I'd like, doesn't sound that exciting, but it's like, I just like look forward to a day when I can just do that and not have to worry about much else.
I have a couple of things, I guess. So the first, I'll get the nerdy thing out of the way. I just started today, but I expect by the end of this summer to put out somewhere between 5 and 6 papers out for review by the end of this summer. So I just am making headway right now on the first one, and they're all kind of lined up. So I've been waiting for the semester to end, grading to end.
You're supposed to be writing that paper for my journal.
Yeah, Jeremy's trying to get me to write another one.
Accountability coach.
But I don't know if that one's going to make it in the queue. But I am unrelated to academia and professional life. I am looking forward to going out west. I'll be driving all the way out to the West Coast later this summer and doing a lot of hiking along the way and seeing from some friends and hopefully seeing music if things return to normal. So
that'd be great.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, I am looking forward to celebrating the grad students in our program tomorrow. I'm director of our graduate program, and so that's been it's been really exciting to see them get to the finish line here. So we're going to be celebrating them a little bit tomorrow. But then the non-nerdy thing is next Thursday, I am hopping in my car and I'm starting to drive down to Key West, Florida, because my brother just moved there. And so I'm going to go see him, and I'm looking forward. Most of all, I'm looking forward to seeing my brother, but I'm really interested about this drive because I have to drive the whole Keys. And so it's all connected by that intercoastal waterway highway. And yeah, I'm going to be driving in the middle of the ocean at a couple of times. And so that's going to be weird and interesting. So I'm not doing it at night. I'm driving halfway and then stopping and then driving the rest of it during the day, mostly because I want to see it too. So that's what I'm looking forward to here at the end.
I'm going to move my blinds because this nice sunshine is too bright. I can't see you all.
She's gone.
MHRA.
I love that your background is the rotunda from the MHRA building.
I know.
That is very clever. That is very clever.
Home away from home.
You're right, which I'm now going to use as a segue to talk a little bit about. So will you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to UNCG, and what you regularly do as the Vice Chancellor for Research and Engagement, but then also what you've been, I guess, dabbling in as acting provost?
Sure. Well, so that we don't have this go on too long, I won't start way at the beginning, but came to UNCG in '95. My husband had the tenure track job, and I started off, as some of you know, I taught 7 classes my first year, not on contract, but 7 individual contracts. So
Wow.
4 in psychology and 3 in human development and family studies. So my background is I have a PhD in clinical psychology and worked at tertiary care medical centers before I came here. So I had a whole other life in healthcare and on faculty in pediatrics and psychiatry. So doing research, but also direct service in the hospital and community settings, and then teaching pediatric fellows, psychiatry fellows, med students, and whatever. So anyway, then was lucky enough to get a visiting associate professor position. So part of the fixed term group that was on there, and then an opportunity came up in clinical. So I applied for that, and was very happy to be on that. Was the oldest untenured associate professor, because in med centers you get promoted, but most people don't have tenure. So I can feel it, Justin and Jeremy and Marianne, in terms of I went up for full and tenure at the same time on a shortened time frame, because I was like, either we get each other or we don't. and if not, then maybe my gig should be somewhere else. And then didn't stay in that position very long because the opportunity to direct the Center for Youth, Family, and Community Partnerships came up. So kind of jumped ship 3 years later, and wonderful job, and did that. And then served as interim Vice Chancellor for Research. And then as one of my colleagues said at another university, I guess the search failed. So then they got me as permanent PC. So I've been in this position for, this will be my officially my 10th year, not counting the interim piece. And so you all know what I do in research and engagement. So it's a wonderful job, gives me an opportunity to care about everybody's scholarship and creative activity and research and whatever. And then we have the administrative pieces of the job that report, and I still get to dabble because 8 of the centers on campus report directly to me. So that is wonderful because I get to see what's going on. I still keep my hand in as a funded PI because I miss the work. And it's also like being a not so secret shopper to see how things are going. I get no special dispensation, so get to see where that was. And then yes, had the privilege of being asked to serve as interim. So been doing that since January. So new appreciation for the role of provost.
Were you asked, or you did not really have another option? Voluntold.
Well, I did suggest some other people that could do it. So and the chancellor did reply, Terry, I did give some thought to this before I asked you. And I said, of course you did. Sorry. So anyway, but it's, as I said, I'm sappy about this place. I love it. And I thought if I can help, and this is what I'm asked to do, then, I'm a team player, and so signed up for it. And, have been learning a lot of things that I didn't really know. You know about the decisions, and about the role of provost from the pieces that impact you, but there were certainly a lot of things. So it's been a bit of a humbling experience. So the nice thing, I guess, about celebrating this, I've done most of the things now at least once. So I don't go into each day going, I'm not sure I know what I'm supposed to do in that meeting.
Right.
But anyway, we have a great team in the provost office. They're amazing. They're supportive, and they're very patient in asking questions. And then obviously can't do it unless you have a terrific team in my home turf, with research and engagement. So everybody's been pulling together to try to make sure that we don't just sort of make it through. I think I've spent a lot of time, my word this spring has been discernment, and really just trying to find that space. What are decisions that really need to be made, and they need to be made now, and we need to move things forward? And what are things that are really should be the purview of the provost coming in, and but tee that up. So gather information for these decisions so they don't have to go back. I felt a big responsibility in the meetings that I've had with folks where they've been, always they're doing their job, and they're being very generous about sharing concerns or things that need to be done. And so part of what I've been very intentional about is how do I make sure that their time is not wasted, and that I'm leaving, they don't have to rehash this again, and that there are folks in the office, again, respecting confidentiality, but there are folks in the office that know the context. And so when the next person comes in, their stuff ready, they're going to have their own agenda and their view, but they can pick it up and move forward. So it's been an interesting time. I would like to have a little more free time. So
we shouldn't be hoping for a failed provost search then.
It's been nice to be asked. And it's nice that I haven't ruined it enough. And obviously, that people have said, oh, please don't do this. But I really love the research and the scholarship and the engagement part, and had an opportunity this past week, which I haven't had as much, to really sit with a couple of our faculty to brainstorm an RFP that came in, had Aubrey from sponsored programs, and I'm like, this is like perfect. It's perfect for the university. It's perfect for and just that hour of sitting there going, and then we can call this person and we can get these people in, and who else do you know, and we're going to craft it this way. And I said, and then in the institutional capability section, you got to be writing like this. And I got off that phone and I was like, and I love, there are lots of wonderful things about being provost, but I'm like, yeah, that's where I should be planted, is in research and engagement. So
is it true that Bob Weinberg tried to convince you to stay on as provost in a full-time capacity?
No.
No.
You should know, is Bob on this call? You can only believe half of what's going on. Hey, Bob.
But I think in your role as Vice Chancellor for Research and Engagement, that's where most of us have come to know you as well. And I think all three of us have interacted with you quite a bit, because all three of us do a lot of, I think, community-oriented work, which we really needed to lean on an office like yours in many cases, because it's not, I don't know, it's not a typical thing that a lot of people are familiar with. And so there's a lot of work that goes into, like what you were saying, you can talk to this person, you can talk to this person, because there's so much of the network building and the trust building that needs to go on around that. And I feel like that's where I've been able to rely on you a lot. And that's been very helpful in my own work in terms of thinking about, if I've got to hand a project off, how can we hand it off? If I'm somebody who should take a lead on it, who else needs to be in the room? And that, I think you're so savvy at. And so thank you for that.
Thank you.
But I thought maybe we could all talk a little bit more about that piece a little bit, in terms of like what it's like working with the community, because the second part of your title is engagement. And so, that's a big piece of it. And so it means a lot of different things. But for us anyway, a lot of it comes around, how do we engage with communities around our work?
And Marianne, weren't you the first person to get tenure under the community engagement?
So I think SPOMA went up for full before I went up for tenure. So in terms of somebody who got promoted, I think SPOMA's full went up before my tenure did. But in terms of the tenure piece of it, like that, everything got redefined at the end of the year, right before I started. The very first meeting that I went to as a faculty member after orientation was like the all college meeting, where they outlined, this is how you can start to embed community engagement into that. And so if we want to like be technical about it, yes, sort of, but
That's a technical phrase, yes, sort of.
So let's talk about it a little bit in terms of like how community engagement and engagement generally is important to what we do.
Yeah.
Jeremy, were you about to say something? I feel like I cut you off.
No. But yeah, I mean, obviously, in the field of peace and conflict studies, of course, it's critical, right? And it takes time. And you mentioned networking, and so I agree, Terry. You have been somebody who helps build those networks, and kind of maybe that's a good term, network builder, right? That are critical for developing community engaged research. And I feel like I'm still doing that. I did not go up for tenure in that way. I think I plan to do that for the next time I go up for full professor, right? But I'm still building that and working on how I'm still trying to understand how to develop that kind of line of research. It's hard, because you build relationships with the community, and then people move on. You shift your focus. You have new questions, and I mean, I'm thinking of like some research that was funded on Bhutanese health and wellness that I've been doing and had been doing, and now it's kind of like some of my respondents and folks who worked in partners in that project have moved on to new things, and the CNNC, for example, has new leadership, and that's gone in a very different direction. I've enjoyed, working with Dia since she's been at CNNC, but it's a very different kind of interaction than when Holly was there. So I don't know.
Well, and I think you guys, just the three of you have such great relationships. And, part of what I see our role in our office is also trying to not mess them up. The back end part of, whether it's agreements or getting people paid or, those sorts of things, and there's still so much. And that's part of why I also didn't want to leave this job, is I have a long list of stuff we got to be working on and improve. And, so as you all know, whether you can build that, but it can break apart if they don't have a good experience on the back end. You can't get, we're still not fast enough, efficient enough. Efficiency is not it, but it takes a while for some things, longer than I would like to get done. And so you're the point person that's with that community partner saying, I'm really sorry, it's coming. Our job is to not put you in that situation. So, I sort of look at it as like in pediatrics, first do no harm, that, we're here to support that, but also to be that thread. So as some things change, I think it's part of how do we continue to make UNCG that trusted partner where maybe regardless of who it is, they feel like that connection can happen. And, that's part of, what Emily Yankees brought in with the P2P grants, and why we wanted to fund those out of our office, is that it's that embeddedness that is really important. And, and you need to lean on it. I was talking with a community partner over the weekend, because there is 99% of our relationships with this partner are going really well. There's one where we've there's a little, and I was like, yeah, I hate to bother you on the weekend, but I really need to talk to you. Tell me if you've got any time. And really part of it was just checking in. And I said, my intel, my spidey sense is saying, we're not quite where we need to be over here. We're good here. Is that true? What can I do? How can we look at this? What, it's that kind of nurturing of any relationship that's really important. So, our job is the institutional floor is to help you guys fly, but you guys have the relationships.
So what would that look like then in terms of the university getting involved with helping create or sustain those relationships? Because obviously individual faculty as researchers, they establish those networks and work with community partners and the participants with the organization, whatever it might be, if they're patients from a hospital or kids at a school or whatever it might be. So how exactly should faculty work in tandem with administration at the university to enhance those relationships with other agencies? Because I don't think that's something I've ever really relied on, that I do with folks at Cone, but I certainly know that is a weakness, is that those relationships could be stronger in terms of the contribution.
Well, I think one thing is, how do we sort of know what the right hand knows what the left hand is doing? So, part of it is not to interfere or micromanage those relationships, but just being able to know in a centralized way who's doing what with whom. I think that helps, because then sometimes we can think about what are some overarching conversations institution to institution that might help. So let me give you an example of Cone. So there are lots of conversations going on with Cone and about a lot of different things, and that we have had for a long time. But because we do a lot of things with them, Part of what we've been looking at is how can we create some governance documents from UNCG as an institution with Cone around data use agreements? How can we streamline I or B? Looking at those things so that we're not reinventing the wheel every time, but everybody's doing their due diligence. But it's sort of, that's another way to sort of support it, so that when you come in and you find that connection with somebody over at Cone and you get to the point of sort of moving something forward, then we're not sort of starting at ground zero. The other piece is to looking at, and knowing what everybody's doing, is helping that other institution or that partner to see all the richness. So today we were meeting with the county around something, and part of it was great because the person who was there was talking about all the different departments that they were connecting with around this one project, but it had started off fairly defined within our Metro Lab network with that, but now it's expanded and it's this department and it's this faculty member and it's this staff member and it's these students and some grads that have now gotten hired, and it's that weaving together. So I think some of it is letting us know, and making sure that we have a place and a repository where we're sort of looking through, like the collaboratory, sort of what is going on. And if you search by partner, part of it is how we can help too, is I do try to keep an eye on both transitions on our side and transitions and things that may be happening in those outside partners. And I don't pretend to know everything by any means, but sometimes you can look and say, okay, this leadership's going to change, or you get intel that you guys know about, or we know about. How do we make sure that we're sort of building in that really warm, or in many cases, I love it, hot handoff? Marianne, you were talking about it, where the topic may move and there needs to be somebody else that comes in, but that trust that you have with that partner, you want to be a good steward of that. And then you also want to make sure that you're okay. Marianne, I remember our conversations on that one transition.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, do we have the right person, and do they feel like they're being taken care of, and where's that? Because you were going to continue to do work, a different kind of work.
Yeah.
And so, I think
sometimes needs change in the middle of a project. And I think that's the interesting part about what I think, your office can help us navigate in an interesting way. And like the theoretical perspective I often use talks about like balancing creativity and constraint. And so I see that in your office, and just the way that you were talking about it, it's like, how can your office give faculty and partners enough structure so that you're not reinventing the wheel every time, that there are supports, that there are past things that you can draw from, so that you're not starting from ground zero, but still you're allowing for enough creativity so that individual projects can flourish in the ways that they need to, that they get networked up at the right time. And I think it's helpful when you're, especially, I do work in food systems. It's systems, like we're talking about numerous institutions that are working together. And so once you're kind of in that kind of work, knowing how the map and the system works together, it's helpful to have somebody who's at your level navigating that with us. So,
and it's helpful to get that feedback. We are by no means perfect, and so part of it is letting us know around you missed the boat, or this is causing us pain, and you goofed up here, and we need to be accountable to that, because it really, well, I believe everything comes down to relationships, but certainly in this work it does. And takes, Jeremy, you were saying, it takes a long time to develop that, and it can be gone in a second,
Yep.
around something. And so, part of that, but Justin, I think to your point is, how do we both respect the individuality and the independence that you need to have in carrying out your work, because you have that vision, you have that question, you have that relationship with a partner, but letting us know so that we can be a help, what's working, what's not. And if it's all fine, we don't need to be a part of it, and we certainly don't need to be a gatekeeper, but we do need to know how we're behaving as a partner. So
So I'm curious to follow up on that. So most faculty, I would assume at most universities, but certainly at UNCG, they do the type of work that the hope is that it can be applied in a real world setting, right? They're not necessarily community engaged scholars. They're more operating under the discovery, what Jeremy went up for and what I'm likely to as well, even though I also feel that I'm definitely involved in community engaged work. So how would you recommend or advise somebody to transition into actually visceral community engaged work to sort of be able to have that be the focus? Because that's, I think in theory, it makes a lot of sense. And then sometimes it's harder to make that leap, I guess, if that makes sense.
yeah, it does, and I'm going to answer this in two ways, and it's going to seem contradictory, but these are the things that I hold in my head. So I think part of it is I am a very practical person. I think I'm guided by values, but I'm also guided about, I like to get things done the way that I like to get them done. So there's a piece of me that says, you have to look at the context in which you are and what you're doing and what your passion is, and how do you tell your story about what you're doing, and that will help you determine sort of is your role to get your department to understand what you're doing, or is the role to get promoted? And so now I'm being very very concrete and transactional. So I'll give you an example. When I went up for promotion and tenure, we didn't have this, but it was at the beginning of sort of the directed studies pieces. And so I had a little different background. I did work pretty different from most of the folks in the department. And so there was sort of like, well, you can go up under this new thing, or you can go up under the regular. And, and we haven't had this before. And so long story short, it was for a very short period of time. They said, well, why don't you sort of go up under both, and then you can get two sets of regular. And I'm like, y'all really want to do that? That's a lot of work for you. Go get off my back. I can do. Well, quickly learned that it didn't make sense. So then they said, well, which way do you want to go? And it was fairly new, and whatever. And I said, and I got advice, go up the regular route. You got it. We just published a book. I had an R01, you can go up this way, because for some people it was like, this is valued more and whatever. For me, because of where I was in my career and whatever, and because I cared about this track, because I saw it as a mechanism to move the kind of work that I wanted to do here, I said, no, I want to go under that one. I want to go under the new one. And so I don't think people really totally got what I was doing, especially as it went through the rungs and the reviews and whatever. But I think I had good advice around how to tell my story to different audiences. And I think that's part of what we also try to do. And I think what we as community engaged scholars try to help each other. You sometimes have to tell your story about why this is important, why this impact is there, because it is different, but it can be done. And so I think part of it is really thinking about who's your audience telling your story and thinking about it and not assuming that people will get the impact. Because if you've not done this, you have to explicitly say, you know, this outcome was because this other outcome, which was building the relationship, happened. That building the relationship is an outcome.
Yep.
And then it's
Yeah.
foundational for the other stuff, but you have to be explicit and you have to tell people about that.
Yeah.
The other piece I would say is I wish that we, in academia or academia sometimes, as we talk about it, did not parse things so much. So I tend to see, you know, I think, you know, while we want to hold a value of authentic, mutually reciprocal, the important things, we know it when we see it around what true community engagement is. We also don't want to be the community engaged police, where it's like, you know, well, that's really not that. And I see in my own career, at least, and then when I look across the campus, this continuum. And it's really, you know, it depends on the question, it depends on the partner, it depends on what place and time. And so I can point to any number of partnerships that I know I say are real and authentic and that I can count on, and that I know from tangible things that the partner says the same thing. But we may have started off as, you know, I started our field placement class in psychology. Some of those relationships with those agencies started in, you know, 96 and 97. And, you know, and then long before I ever worked with them on anything related to a project. And then there are other things where it really started off and they were looking for an evaluator. We need an evaluator. Can you come and evaluate? And part of it for me was, if you want somebody to crunch your numbers, I'll get you somebody good. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to be a partner. I want you to understand your data. I want to help take you to the next level. I want you to ask me, I want to work myself out of a job and into another job. How can I be that strategic partner and help you understand and use data to really drive, you know, your goals as a nonprofit, for example. And so, you know, it started off there. And then, yeah, we've got this connection. Hey, would you like some interns? You know, and so then you can do it. So I think part of it is not looking at parsing that, but really how to use that relationship and how can you, you know, look across questions and times in your life and, you know, where times in the life of that outside partner where what they may most need may be something different and may not look at that sort of reciprocal thing, but still part of that partnership and it's part of that relationship. So I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever.
Oh, it made like totally perfect sense because literally we're pushing this kind of conversation in our department right now because I've asked us to do it because we just got done with we had to do a self-study right before the pandemic. And so it's, you know, our making sense of it has kind of been put on the back burner a little bit. But as we get back into it, I've really been trying to push the conversation in our department and we're real friendly toward community engaged stuff, you know, but I've been pushing it because I'm trying to decide. I keep saying if, and everybody raises their eyes when I say if. They're like, if, what do you mean if you're going to go up for full? I'm like, if I'm going to go up for full, you know, I was like, I might need some more flexibility in other ways because I get it. But like, that's what I'm trying to figure out is when I started, we had one full professor in our department and now I think we've got 6 or 7. And so everything has changed. And so now more people from my department are going to be reviewing my file if and when I go up for full. And so I want to get a better sense from them. Like, how do I need to articulate my community engaged work for you so that you understand why there are gaps in my CV? Like, yes, there are 2 years when I didn't have a journal publication at all. And so, however, I'm about to have an 8 distinct case study book come out in August. And so you're getting that instead. And so how do I talk about that with you so that you understand these sorts of things? And so that's the like narrating your piece of it. But then also
we also need to do work on our end to your
Yeah.
point, Mary Ann. We had a lot of conversations in 2012 when we changed the promotion and tenure guidelines, and you could, and they were at the faculty senate and they were in departments, and they were, some of it was coming out of our office and IC and all of that. But we have had a lot of change. To your point, we have people move on, we have new people here. And so I've been talking about, and then we had some of those conversations on campus that, generated those documents that are on the IC website, kind of conversations that were more institutional based. It is time to go back around again.
Yep.
To have these sort of institutional kind of conversations while you're having the department ones, because we do have more people who are coming. I'm looking, so the institutional piece, if I look at all the people that are going to retire, or retirement age and phased retirement, or some people might say should retire, is how those people are going to leave. How do we, in all areas, how can we be that institution that, whatever folks are looking at, can we get, so we're talking about community engagement. How do we get the best and brightest? How do we get the three of you, if you were on the job market? How do we get you here? And some of that is it's way overdue to go back and have this conversation, including the conversation around impact. And we have got to get better about defining
expanding the products that we use to evaluate ourselves.
Products of scholarship. I'm like, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do that. As happened in one meeting back in 2011, I think, and I still remember where I was sitting, and I remember the person who asked me, because we were also including it, things like patents and as examples. And somebody said, so how many patents equal one first author journal, in this high impact factor journal? And I looked and I said, you can't, they're not equivalent, but you can have a conversation about impact and whatever. And then the same person in a meeting said, well, it looks like here for this entrepreneurial stuff, like you have to have good ideas. And you get credit if you have a good idea. Like I get up every day and I have a good idea. So do you give me tenure for that? And so I said, besides the bad idea that you just articulated, no, we're not saying that. I said, come on, let's talk about this. And so it is hard. I'm not minimizing it. But we should, as you're having these individual conversations, we ought to be having them, and we are.
Yeah.
But we need to, continue to move the needle around how do we define impact? We get drawn to these distinct numbers because they're easy. And I get, tied up. It's easy for me to rattle off, how many external research dollars. But in my own career, the things that I'm most proud of that really had impact did not come with those dollars at all. They weren't grant funded. They were based on relationships, and they made huge impacts in people's lives. But it had nothing to do with that. But it's easy. So, we need everybody. That's the work.
Well, what's neat about this, I think, is that there are enough of us who have been doing this kind of work that I think if we sat down and really told you, hey, these are some of the things that came up that we had to work through in my time here, in terms of articulating, like, again, why there might be gaps in a CV and why, why you might have to wait to publish something because you haven't sufficiently really built up enough trust with the community to feel comfortable telling their story and talking about them. So, so I think that's what's neat, is that we've got enough of us, I think, who are doing this kind of work who can say, these are the things that we really need to talk about because we've gone through it now. We're not always talking about it from a, I guess it's more of a, we can make sense more of it now because enough of us have done it.
And I have seen, it's not where we need to be, but I have seen changes where early on, for some of those dossiers that came up, if there was a question around, we don't really understand this community stuff, so we're just going to put it in service.
Yep.
We know it has value. It's with the community. I don't totally get it, so we'll just put it in service, which of course, if you take all of your scholarship and stick it in service, then your research part looks kind of weak.
Yep.
So moving from this, I don't understand it, but I'm going to put my frame on it, and that makes it right, which is wrong, to at least what I see more of, not uniformly, is I don't understand, but I'm going to seek to understand. I know that this is important. Help me to understand. And part of that is because our community engaged scholars have been pushing back and saying, tell me what you need, because you need to understand this, because whatever. So, systems, as you all know, take a long time, but we have to keep chipping away at it. But I have seen a change where there is, even if I don't totally understand it, I've either listened to my colleague tell me about their scholarship, and there are enough of them where I hear what it is, or I know this is an important value of this institution. So that's the institutional piece coming back in. And so I need to figure out, how do I make sense of this? And so asking those questions, but it'd be nice if there wasn't, where we were further along. So
yeah,
it's that developmental mindset, right? Coming from a development field, that seems like second nature in a way to me. But in academia, I mean, even in this conversation, it's like, well, what are my products, and what are, it's like people are worried about that process more than, like you said, the impact of what you're doing, right? And what your research can have real impact on people's lives. The 5 articles that Justin writes, is anybody going to read them?
I will
read I
will read your
journal that he said wasn't on his list.
Exactly. Nobody reads those either.
Right. No, that's totally fair, because like, if, let's say I never wrote a single article while I was here, but by the time I go up for tenure, I'll have taken with my hiking program for cancer survivors 400 hikes. 400 hikes.
Yeah.
I mean, is that worth something in its own right?
Yes. Bob Weinberg got us all riled up. I think, I can't remember if it was in the time when we came up with liquid philosophy, or if it was another time when we were all hanging out, where he got us all riled up about our eminence measures, and what we needed to be arguing was important. So yes, in the words of Bob Weinberg, your 400 hikes are totally worth it.
And the notes that you're taking, Justin, are an eminence measure, as Bob would say.
And your what?
The notes that he's taking on our liquid philosophy.
Yeah. Yes, he would. He would say that. Oh.
All right, so we're going to start to get ready to wrap things up here, but in some of our closing questions, we've been doing all of this during a pandemic, and that's what we've really kind of been getting into on some of our episodes over season 3 and season 4, since we went to video. And I guess as we start to think about bringing the semester to a close, what are some of the things that you've learned? And this is for all of us. Like, what are some of the things that you've learned during the pandemic that you want to take with you moving forward? Like, so often people are like, oh, let's get back to normal. Let's get back to normal. Let's get back to normal. It's like, well, first of all, what is normal? But then really, like, how about we move to something even better? And so in terms of, we've had to go through some really rough stuff over the last year plus. And, yes, we want to get back to some of the things that make us feel good and happy about the work that we do. But I've learned a lot going through the stuff of the pandemic. And so I guess I'm curious from all of you, and, to share this with our listeners, like, what are you all going to take forward with you out of this pandemic? that you hope to it's either a practice you want to continue, or something that you've learned about your teaching or your research or your service, or something that you didn't know you missed and now you know you miss it, and you want to get back to that. So what you taking with you?
Terry.
You want me
You're
to
gonna have
start?
to rock, scissors, paper it in a minute.
Okay.
Who's gonna go
Want me to
first?
start?
Yeah.
Okay. So, institution, I'll go down.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think we are putting into place is when we looked at how decisions and on the fly and trying to predict the future, when, what we started calling cross-functional teams, the COVID response team meeting every week, all the different work groups and whatever, but that idea of regular meetings with people from lots of different perspectives is something that at an administrative level, we are looking and replicating across a lot of different things, whether it's just administratively at Chancellor's Council, whether it has to do with specific units and whatever. So I think that was one thing about, hey, the only way we sort of not only survived, but in some ways thrived. And again, not to take away the harms that we know have happened and will continue to have some of that trauma. But it was that, let's take that way of working because, we need this going through. And if it helped us in a pandemic, wow, it would really help us if we're just looking at
Regularly having those conversations.
With that. So, I think that, and I could talk about a lot of stuff, but I think that's that one thing, and committed to that and setting up some structures where it means like, people are meeting extra, but it's like, no, we're going to meet every week because we're going to talk about this.
Mhm.
And we're going to toggle between the strategic, so what's a long game, and the operational. And I think understanding that you need both of those, like, where do we want to be and what are our values and how do we want to do it and what do we got to be about, but we got to make this decision today, and toggling between those two. So I think that's one thing. One thing I learned, and I haven't solved it because of doing these two jobs, is I did not realize how much I use traveling to meetings as my thinking time. Because I often, like we'll book a half a day early. I've written so many grants on cocktail napkins from the airlines. I'm literally, my best ideas. But I also, there's several meetings that I go to on a regular basis where I go the day before. I take a boatload of work, but it's my thinking time. And I was like, why do I feel like I don't have any time to do this? And it dawned on me, I didn't replace that with anything. And it's going to be a while before we do that. And of course, now I don't have any time, but that I really had gotten into looking forward to that. And there were lots of things that were really about that strategic thinking that I hadn't carved out any other time for. So that I have to work on, so I'm trying to find what that replacement is. The other part is I didn't realize how much I'm a hugging person. I try to respect people's space, but how much I just miss that touch, that human connection, whether it's with folks. But when and my son works in healthcare and got COVID in the fall, it was very scary from a patient because the hospital had not communicated. He does home health. And he was sick. He didn't get hospitalized, but he was very sick. And then he got my daughter-in-law sick. And anyway, not being able, dropping off food and having to stand at the bottom of the driveway. And I cannot imagine for family who had folks in the hospital what that was like. When we got vaccinated and they got vaccinated again, besides these antibodies, it was like the time to hug them. And how much, people would say, what are you going to do when all this is over or whatever? And I kept saying, I'm going to hug my son and my daughter-in-law. And that's the first thing. And so to be able to have a meal and be under the same house and, not have to have mass and to be together. And, and then today we had this meeting, in our conference room here. There were 6 of us. We were socially distant, but everybody said, can we meet in person? And oh my gosh, it was so great. So one of them, who I know really well, said, I'm completely vaccinated. I said, so am I. And he said, can I hug you? And I said, yes, please do, because you're part of my family. You're part of my pod. And so I miss that. And I didn't realize how much I miss that, just that touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple that are similar
Yeah.
to her, so I'm going to hop in.
Yeah.
It has to do with the thinking time and the travel time. It's a slightly different observation than yours. But it's really ultimately related to the first thing that you talked about in terms of like getting more people to collaborate together and be in those meetings and spaces. Because I think the biggest thing that I have learned is because a lot of my meetings that I am traveling to are in Greensboro, and they're all so many different food systems meetings, everything from a small community garden meeting to the city's, community food task force meeting. And then I'm coming back to campus to teach classes, and then I'm running back over somewhere else. And I was wasting so much time in my car because I was running all over the place, and I haven't had to do that. And my life has been significantly less stressful. And I started to think about, all right, I'm still going to have to go to the meetings. How do I do this? And so I think one of the crucial moves, at least that I'm going to start pushing, is that it'd be really great that even when we do schedule face-to-face meetings, that we've got a Zoom option. We've done that in the grad school for a long time now, and it has been wonderful. And I've always told them how much I appreciated that, because I've never actually been to a grad school meeting face-to-face with the other grad faculty. I've always Zoomed in, and it has been incredibly helpful for me. But I've realized that my teaching got better when I was all online. And I think weird, huh? And I think it's because I have to do so much face work with everybody that I was getting exhausted in ways. And it wasn't hurting my community relationships, because I think I was still able to maintain those in some ways, but I was getting real burned out being in person with my students. And being able to do some of the work through Zoom, and being able to set up some of my classes in the way that I've done it, I actually feel like I've been more immediate for them than when I'm in the same room with them. And it's been really strange. And so I've been talking about this with my department head and some of the senior faculty, because so many of them are ready to get back to in-person classes. And I'm like, can I stay online? Because I like it. And I think my students like what I'm doing too. And so that's been interesting to navigate, because I think so many people just assume that we're all ready to like get back in the classroom. Yeah. But I think there are a few of us that might have learned that, even though we've got personalities that people are like, oh, you'd be great in a classroom and students must love you. It's like, well, there's only so much of me that I can spread around that way. And I might be even better if some of these things can be online too. And so I guess it's similar observations about like, to get the people in the room to have those meetings that you'd like to have. I've been able to attend more stuff because I've been able to Zoom into more things. Right. So that's been cool. And I haven't lost a lot of time driving all over the place. But then also when it comes to my students too, it's been interesting to have a different kind of connection with them that has seemed to work for me in weird ways that are unexpected. Yeah.
Yes. Similarly, that I have had a similar experience with feeling connected to some folks on Zoom. Well, the students who turn on their cameras, at least.
Yeah.
Feeling a little bit, connected in a different way. I have a senior seminar class where I feel like that's actually worked better in some ways. But ultimately, I agree. I agree also with what you said, Marianne, like the saving of time. I realized even just walking across campus, I was spending so much time like running from one room to the next and one building to the next, that it's like, it's been kind of nice and less stressful to do that. But I think the other thing for me has not been, it's maybe not something that I learned, but something that I kind of have grown to appreciate a little bit more is that, how we think is how we are, that we kind of, the social constructionist kind of a mindset really does play out. And like, if I'm and I've noticed it just in terms of being stressed and worried about things too, it's like, wow, if I take note of that, if I've just noticed that and realized that that's conditioning how I'm responding a lot more. And maybe because it's like you're on a Zoom call and constantly with no break in between. And so you're constantly almost looking at yourself as you're speaking too. It's that can be stressful and disconcerting too. But then the last thing, which is more of a negative, and I shouldn't end on a negative, but has been the actual writing process for me has been way worse because like, so Justin, you're talking about 5 articles. I'm like, man, I feel like I have so many writing projects that, and I just had this kind of epiphany the other day that it's like, oh, that's why. Because I'm doing it on a computer. I'll say, oh, I'm going to get on and write. And before, where I really enjoyed that, because I'm on Zooms all the time and on the computer all the time, I'm like, man, when I don't have a meeting, I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, and so I procrastinate. I find other things to do. And maybe that's why, like when I said before, wanting to get back to this kitchen remodel job, it's like, I just don't want to be on a computer. It's like, it's just.
And you write with writing groups too, right, Jeremy?
Some, yeah. And actually I'm signed up to go to the writing in the faculty center. There's a faculty center writing retreat that Paul Silva and others have set up. And I was kind of, yeah, it's interesting because I'm kind of like, I'm looking forward to that. Like just being able to sit on my computer and do that, but not have to be like, oh yeah, I have that 10 o'clock meeting I have to go to. And now I have another 11 o'clock and, or whatever. I feel like I'm just constantly like, oh, there's only 5 more minutes. And then I don't really have time in those gaps where I could maybe fit it in between meetings before. Now I feel like I don't have that gap anymore. And so, and then when I do have the gap or the time, I'm just like, I'm tired. I'm done with looking at this computer. I'm not doing that anymore. And so therefore my writing has kind of languished over the last year, I think. And I have a couple of emails that I've recently sent out. Like, I'm still getting to that. I'm going to get that done. Don't worry. But I just can't motivate myself to do it,
I think I'll play the role of the contrarian, no surprise here, and maybe a little bit of our own Eeyore. But I don't feel that I can connect with people online, and I don't like the virtual lack of engagement, I guess, of teaching online. And I actually do. I get the point that it's easier to stay where you are and go from meeting to meeting online, but I actually appreciate walking from building to building or my bike from home to the building because one, it's activity and it's fresh air, but it also is an opportunity for me to think. Whereas if you're just jumping from one online meeting to the next, you're always mediated, you're always hyper mediated, you're always staring at that same square, you're not getting up and letting your blood flow. And that sort of connects to one of the things that I picked up. Well, I've always been an avid hiker. When we went online in March, for whatever reason, I started hiking every single day. Usually I would go out 3 or 4 times a week. And now it's very rarely that I don't go out every day a week to start my day. So I'll go out, hike at the watershed for not a long time, 60 to 90 minutes, but enough to get my thoughts. Enough to get my thoughts in order, enough to like appreciate the restorative properties of being in nature so that when I do have to go teach or when I do have to sit in front of the computer, it's a lot easier for me to be able to do that because I've sort of started my day grounded in nature and thought and exercise, and it's been beneficial. So that's definitely something I hope to continue moving forward.
That's great.
That's rad. I'm totally gonna cut this part out because I don't want this to be in the episode, but like I started to get in a similar practice of getting up every morning because I've got 2 roommates and one of them works second shift, so he's always sleeping in later. And I was like, I need to get up and get out. And I got in like one really solid week of doing it every day. And then Justin knows this. Jeremy doesn't know this yet. Terry, you don't know this either. But I had to have my toenail on my big toenail on my right foot permanently removed. This is why I don't want to put it on the episode.
No, it's going on there.
It's
No,
going on
definitely
the
gotta be
episode
there.
now.
We'll call it the toenail episode.
You must remember that I'm the one who edits this. But I've only been able to wear sandals since then. This was a month ago, and it's a 10 to 12 week healing process. And I'm like, what? And I can't go swimming until July. Like, I swim a lot in the summer, and it's like a primary form of exercise when one of my friends' pools opens, and so I can't do any of that. And so that has been, well, on the one hand, it's been kind of nice that this is all going on during, I haven't had to deal with being on campus while this is going on, but I can't wear the shoes that I would need to wear in order to do this on a regular basis. But anyway. Yeah.
Well, I love it for somebody who isn't doing the walking that I normally do. Justin, I love it when you say 60 to 90 minutes, kind of a short little that just goes to show what kind of shape you're in versus me, which is like, yay, I stood at my standing desk for 10 minutes today before I said, forget it. I'm just too tired. I can't hold my body up.
That's funny because the swimming, I have the Y has actually gone to scheduling times, and so for swimming, and so before I swam and lifted a little bit to try to do my workout. Now because of COVID, I kind of stopped the lifting part, but the swimming part has kicked up a lot more because they give a 45-minute block, and so it's like I'm going to take advantage of my whole time, and the fact that it's a set, it's like not just when I need to get there or when I think I can get there. It's like, no, I have an appointment.
Yeah.
So I've actually left some Zoom meetings, like I have a 5 o'clock, I gotta go, and they think it's a meeting. It's like, no, I'm going to swim. Like,
I wonder if it's going to get us to think about our time like that differently, though, in terms of like, no, this is the time that I have set aside to take care of myself. And if any of us can set aside time to take care of ourselves. Yeah.
We really should. We really should. The part that's going to be a little more difficult is, and this has started to happen in the last couple of weeks where, I've got some meetings that are face-to-face, but others that are Zoom. And I'm like, okay, I kind of have to know this because they're so used to back to back to back to back. And all you're doing is, leave and join the meeting, then leave and join the meeting. That if I found myself going, oh, I have to leave a little bit early because I have to walk someplace now to get to the next meeting or come back. And then there was one that was face-to-face. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to Zoom in because I'm backing up on 2 other things where I have to be in my office. And unless you have a place for me to work, I can bring my laptop and then be face-to-face. So, it's that hybrid scheduling, if you will, that's going to need a little planning. So,
Well, we are normally at the time where we would do last call, but I feel like we've covered so much ground that I don't know. Does anybody have anything burning desire that they would like to share before we?
I guess I'd just like to say thank you guys for keeping it going. I think it is so important, and I don't always get to listen to, but I do love to bop in and listen to what's going on, and really loved it when it was face to face. Got to go to some places around Greensboro that I hadn't been to, and do remember some of the early meetings with Celia so anyway, but thank you for it takes you guys continuing this and sending out the scheduling and all of that and stepping up to the plate. And I appreciate you all doing that because I think it's been a real lifeline in a lot of ways. So
when you mentioned the Spidey sense, which I've heard you mention before, I was thinking I have the superhero question. If the vice chancellor and the provost fought, who wins?
They merge into one person.
Well, it has in those instances, in the last few months, unfortunately, the vice chancellor lost because it was over a budget piece. And so Alan Boyette said to me, okay, we had agreed this money would come over to the Office of Research. And so, what fund number and whatever. And so the next day I said, Alan, the interim provost had a conversation with the VC for research, and the interim provost won. So you were not sending that money over. And he said, really? And I said, no. I said, but you know what? I'm in better shape than the provost. I said, so, if I'm looking at the greater good, and I'm also looking at some centralized funds that the new provost will have to be able to direct, some initiatives and whatever. So I'm really like, we need to carve out some dollars for this person coming in, and so I can do my part. I said, now, when I go back to that other role, I said, don't be thinking you can do this again, but, so it's been interesting, and when we had to figure out the budget cut, which I'm sorry about, but we always, keep the instructional units. And so, research and student affairs always take more than the academic units. And so again, I was meeting with Alan, and we were talking about the budget cuts, and I said, so we're giving 0 to research and engagement. If you went like this, I said, I'm only kidding. So we'll do what we've done before. We got to protect the instructional unit and whatever. I said, but one of these days I'm going to teach a class so I can say I'm an instructional unit. So you don't count on this extra cut. So anyway, but yeah, unfortunately, I think VC for research is kind of lost out, kind of looking at the greater good. So anyway.
Well, we do appreciate you spending some time with us and doing both of your roles, but particularly the VC role and everything that you have done, I think, to help support what we've done here at the university, but also with the communities that we work with too. So much appreciated. And thank you all to our Liquid Philosophy listeners. We made it through 4 seasons. We'll probably be back for a 5th. I haven't told Jeremy and Justin this yet, but we're totally going to interview my colleagues next semester because we've been working as the Center for Communication, Community Collaboration, and Change here at UNCG. The CCCCCCC. And in fact, Justin and I co-hosted a You Should Do a Podcast event alongside of them. So we're also going to make that available to all of our listeners. So if you would like to start your own podcast, we've got some tips, not only from us, but also from a few community partners and other colleagues of mine who do a lot of podcasting. So not only do you get your May wrap-up graduation special, but you also get a little bit of how to do a podcast as well. So in the meantime, everybody enjoy your summers. Happy graduation. Happy end of semester. I hope everybody's grades are in, and enjoy your off-contract time. Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you. Bye. Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for Liquid Philosophy. We hope you've enjoyed your time thinking and drinking with some local college professors about what we do and why it's important. We do take the topic of drinking very seriously, and we want to make sure that no one is out there drinking and driving. Stay safe, y'all. And if you feel like you're having a problem with alcohol or other drugs, please contact your campus health department or talk to your doctor. I should probably also mention that the views of Liquid Philosophy hosts and our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of the University of North Carolina at Greensboro or the UNC system. That should do it for the disclaimers. Until next time.